As many of you know, strong partnerships are the key to building thriving ecosystems and communities. So across K-12 districts, out-of-school providers, museums, governments, businesses, ecosystems are forging relationships and helping build sustainable partnerships. We've spoken to so many of you about building these partnerships, what works, what questions you still have, and even what you're struggling with. And partnerships with business and industry continues to be a hot topic, and one of the ones that are most requested by SLE COP members. Today, we're pleased to pull together a few ecosystem leaders to share with us the importance of sustainable relationships with business and industry and how you might be able to do this in your community. This is not just a listening session. As members of the SLE COP, we're expecting all of you to link in the chat. Just lost my train of thought. We're expecting all of you to act, especially this summer. We hope that the webinars like these and the East-based learning courses all of you will take what you're learning in this community and apply it. Through this application and learning on the ground, we continue to share and iterate as a community of practice. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone of a few things. Please use the chat to back channel and talk about the discussions our panelists are having. Panelists, also you, I encourage you to please participate in the chat as well while you're not speaking. If you have questions, we are going to have some time at the end. So we'll kind of give you a heads up so you can place those in the chat near the end. We don't have webinar running today, so we don't have that Q&A tool. So kind of note those down and we'll let you know when we're getting to audience questions and you can put those in the chat. Helping moderate today is Exanne Black, a highly respected member of the SLE COP and former leader of the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. Exanne, what can you tell us about our panelists today?
Well, we scoured the entire earth and found just all the rock stars of business partnerships. These guys are going to give you all of the silver bullets plus. So get ready, buckle your seatbelt. If you guys would introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about your experience in building business partnerships really briefly, because we have a ton of hard questions for you. So Celeste, would you kick us off from Northeast Florida?
I sure will. Thank you for having me today. Actually, I am with Northeast Florida STEM2 Hub Ecosystem. I work with Kathleen Schofield, which many of you are familiar with, and she was very sorry she could not be here today. So I hope I can do as well as her. I will try my best. I've been working with Kathy for a little over a year now, but we have known each other and worked together for the last 15 years in different realms. So I am very happy to be here. I was an educator for 26 years. And like I said, I just came over about, a little over a year ago with Kathy. And I am excited to share how Northeast Florida STEM ecosystem began and started our partnerships with many businesses in the community and throughout the nation. So
awesome. Thank you, Celeste. Reginald, we'll kick it over to you, man. Tell us how
Thank
it's
you
going.
for having me. Thank you. My name is Reginald McGregor. I'm with the Indiana State Ecosystem, and I am an industry partner within that ecosystem. So I think it's a bio where I don't got to get in all to the details, but enjoy the intersection I sit in from a business perspective, as well as from an education perspective as a school board president. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Glad you're here, Reginald. Scott Fry from Mid-America.
Thank you, Exanne, and good afternoon and or morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Scott Fry, and I'm Director of Workforce Development for the Mid-America Industrial Park, which is a 9,000-acre industrial park located about 45 minutes east of Tulsa. We've got approximately 80 companies, 5,000 employees. One of those companies happens to be Google, who operates the second largest data center in the world here at Mid-America Industrial Park. And we're very excited to share our experiences and connecting with businesses and making the STEM ecosystem relevant to their needs.
Yay. Thank you all so much. I know when I first talked to Reginald about this webinar, he's like, let's don't just tell stories. So this is not story time. So you can put your milk away and your cookies away, because we are going to give you tools to actually build those partnerships. So get ready. So right out of the gate, we're going to ask a hard question, right? Like, what is an ask of a business partner that's going to get shot down every time, and what's an ask that's going to go where we want it to go? I have done it wrong. I thought in the beginning that business partners wanted the Genesis account, like in the beginning, and tell them everything about it all the way up to the point, like an English paper. And so Reginald is laughing because that's what my business partners did too. They were like, Exanne, your emails. So Reginald, tell us how to ask in a way that has a chance of getting a good response.
So let's think of it in this way. So time is of the essence. Most industry partners are in business to make business. And when they're away from making their business or touching their product, it's what they call indirect time. But at the same time, most industry business leaders understand the importance of STEM education. And they also understand the importance of being involved in community. But when you come, now let me just talk as an industry. When you come to me though, come to me with your why. Just why, like, how did you meet me? How did you find me? Did you just see me on LinkedIn? But because you're looking for a connection. And as you talk to me about your why, also talk to me about the impact that you've already had, and also talk about who else is already collaborating with you. Don't let me have to ask, so who else is part of that, of your advisory council? So 3 things. 1, try to find a connection with me. Talk to me about your why. Also talk to me about the impact that you've already had. And with me coming on board, supporting you, what bigger impact do you expect? And then, of course, make sure talk to me about your other collaboration with other industry partners as well.
Awesome. Tie it all up for them, right, with a bow. Don't make them go on hunting expeditions, which I'm fond of, but not a good approach. So Celeste, what would you add to what Reginald said?
Oops. Reginald said that beautifully. I totally agree. I think knowing the purpose, being respectful of the time, that the partners put in, and also sharing the impact, being very transparent with what is going on, the impact. I can't say enough, what impact, and also asking for the partners, what their experience is, with asking them, what do you expect from these students when they graduate from high school and from college, and getting their feedback on what they are seeing that's happening now and how we can impact that in the future.
Awesome. Great insights. Scott, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so great answers by both Reginald and Celeste. Not a lot to add there, but echo what they said. Time is just critical with our companies. They don't have a whole lot of it. And so when you do approach them, you kind of have to have your pitch ready. It needs to be succinct to the point, but they also have to see the relevance and the value into the ask that you're making of them. And so, you kind of need to go into those conversations understanding as much as you can what is important to those companies, what are their goals and expectations. And I think for us, what has been really successful is being able to wrap it all around workforce development. And one thing I learned is being part of the STEM ecosystem, it's not about doing STEM for the sake of STEM, right? And I've always kept that at the forefront of my mind. It's all about workforce development for us. And so I think our companies understand the impact that they can have, be involved in these programs and getting their brand in front of these potential workers. And so I think you just really need to be as buttoned up as possible and not go in unprepared.
I think that's a great point. And I think that's part of the language discussion we'll have later. Like, as an educator, I might have that in my mind, but it's so far down the road. I'm just talking to you about, let's do great STEM activities. And you as a business partner are like, and what's the point? So some have compared business and education, as like cuddling up with a porcupine. Like, it might give you warmth eventually, but it's going to be a sticky situation.
That hurts my heart. Yeah.
It's true, Reginald, it's true. So tell me, how important is it to have a relationship with the person that you reach out to? If I don't know somebody in this company, am I just dead in the water? Who wants to try that? Scott, you want to give it first shot?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I don't think you're dead in the water because you have to start building those relationships somewhere. And I think, it's great if you do know somebody and you can be a little bit more targeted. If there's somebody within the organization that gets it, that they understand STEM, they understand the impact STEM can have on workforce development. But if not, I think approaching company leaders, decision makers is very important to have their buy-in in the process. Not that that'll be the person that you'll work with moving forward, but if they understand the value of what you're doing through the programming, then they can articulate that down to their people to champion those efforts. Now, I think typically with our companies, we'll end up with a champion in those individual organizations that we lean on. And it's important to have those champions. And those are the people that you can typically rely on. And they'll vary, right? It might be an engineer within the organization. It could be a technician. It could be an HR person. It just really varies, but somebody that really has the passion of making a difference.
Awesome. Thank you. Who wants to add to that, Reginald?
So remember, when you're talking about industry, you're not talking about a building, you are talking about people. So there is some connection that you have to find. In most cases, there's a messenger to the champions. So whether the relationship or the knowledge that you have of the messenger for you, could be a person, could be a parent, could be a neighbor, but you want that person to be able to speak to your truth and to your values, to the champions. Because keep in mind, you're not the only person coming to us asking for a partnership. So, and to Scott's point, just because you don't know a person doesn't mean you're dead in the water. You could just be, I'm maxed out this season. Come back to me next season. So, but try to find a connection to the people of the business or the industry if you can.
Awesome.
No, I'm sorry, Roxanne, I want to interrupt. I apologize, but I've got a question that I'm curious about. Frankly, for all three of you, but Reginald, I want to start with you. I'm wondering if you can think to organizations that you have partnerships with, who approached you cold, you didn't have a connection with them, and what they did that got them into the door and got you interested in what they're saying. So people who didn't have a connection to you, how did they pull it off? What did they do?
Okay, this is a good one here. So we was involved with First Robotics for a few years, and then all of a sudden the state of Indiana decided they want to take on VEX Robotics. We didn't know VEX Robotics. VEX Robotics didn't really know us. So when VEX made the pitch to us, of course, the first question as the messenger, and partly the champion was messenger, but I'm already doing robots. I'm already doing competitions. I'm already inspiring kids in this space. But VEX began to talk to me about, but let's think about the 6-year-old and the 7-year-old and the 8-year-old before they get to the middle school and to the high school. So all of a sudden they begin to resonate. You're right, that's a different area that we haven't targeted. And then they begin to talk about how they are introducing these robots to these early grades. And then they talked about their reach. So Reginald, we know, and I mean, they done the research. A lot of first programs of some of the more affluent schools, it's just the nature of the beast. But they began to talk about the funding that they had already received to make sure that all students in all zip codes, as many as possible, and their target was rural, urban areas. They already had the funding to get the robots, but they were looking for mentors who could come alongside those students that looked like the students. Wow, okay, I think we can support that. And then of course, starting with that first year, then we begin to say, well, you know what, we do have additional funding to even give a greater stretch or a bigger reach. So just kind of really talked about the things that we hadn't done before and really showed us really how we can be an impact in this area. So
so they're coming in with a plan, and it sounds like also, it sounds like a thing that resonated with you, I think, is that they came in with some funding too. They weren't coming in with nothing. Right. Celeste, what about you? When you've cold called an organization to help your ecosystem, how have you been successful?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I'm going to be blatantly honest. Kathy does most of that as our executive director with the board members. She has more on that. I don't want to speak to that because I really haven't been in that situation with only being there for 1.5 years. And so I'm just going to be honest with you. And Kathy, she would be happy. I can ask her this question and pose this question to her and have her reach out to everyone. That would not be a problem. So sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
Scott, how about you? Have you had any luck?
Yeah, and to be quite honest, I think that we're kind of in a unique position because, we have all of our companies concentrated within a 9,000 acre area. And so it's a small community. We reside in a community of 10,000 people. We employ 5,000 people. And so Reginald talked about it earlier. It's about people at the end of the day, and it's about that relationship building. And so I think it's just so critical that, you keep that in the front of your mind as you approach these companies. And cold calling, we've done that, but we've also been fortunate enough that we typically will know somebody within our organization. It's not as big of a lift as maybe what Exxon has in the Tulsa area. Well, many more companies to deal with. Ours, quite frankly, is probably a little bit easier than some in larger metro areas. And so we're fortunate in that regard.
I think an important thing to think about with all of that is it's a really important thing as an ecosystem to know who your community's super connectors are. I think about Cleveland just because that's where I'm from. And I can think of, I don't know, like 4 people probably who between the 4 of them probably know, and certainly second degree know, every single person who's in a leadership position of every single company in the region. So those people need to be your best friends, I think is another big takeaway. Exxon, I apologize for hijacking. You know how it is. I get questions in my head and I want to know the answer.
Good.
so,
Yeah.
so I asked them. So Exxon, back to you.
Yay. So if you're on here and you have questions about the ask, be thinking about that and let us know, because we're coming to the end of the ask part. So the last part on the ask is there a magical person to ask in a company? Like, what's the job title that gives me the best chance? Because you as ecosystem leaders also have a few things to do. And if you can be more efficient with that ask, it's good. And you don't feel foolish when you're asking completely the wrong person. So for our panelists, is there a place they should start if they know nothing and they're just looking at an org chart?
I'll start. Let's think of it like this. So just like there's structures in industry, there are structures in your organization. So you think about if a person was to ask of you to do something, at what level or what position do you want that person to come to? Whether it be one of your facilitators in one of your programs, maybe one of your teachers when you have a school, or the chief financial officer, or whoever that person is. So think about it in those same terms. Because just like it's really like, as a funder, it helps me if a financial person in the organization is talking to me. In some cases, in other cases, it also helpful for a person to reach out or make connection to a person who can really talk through I call the challenges of the organization. And because of the challenges, why we are here in front of you today, Reginald. So, I hate to say, but it kind of depends on the ask. But think about your own organization when you start deciding our strategy is to reach out to who, and I'm going to use CFO, COO, or facilitator, and that'll go along with. That's the start, because it's just the start of the conversation.
Awesome. That's good. Thank you for that. And Scott or Celeste, do you want to add to that? Okay. Yep, Scott.
Yeah. So I love Reginald's comments there. That helped me a little bit too. So typically, we'll know somebody within the organizations that we can go to with our ask, and some of that would be dependent upon what that ask is going to be that can help us push that through the organization. However, if we're going in cold, typically we're going to go after a decision maker. And so that's kind of the person that we feel like can help us. If they need to delegate that information down, they can help us connect with the right people. But we feel like we have to have their buy-in, their commitment, their support for it to be successful with the organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So we talked about the ask, the door is open. Now, heart's beating really fast. Now you're in the conversation and you don't want to screw it up, right? So it's been said by some that business and education speak a different language. Do you think that's true or not true? And how have you seen it manifest itself? Celeste shook her head. Yes. So Celeste, you're on.
Yeah, and I, coming from education, going into my role here in the ecosystem, it's very different. It's a whole different world. I always say that I've entered and I've learned a lot, and you do need to understand, the difference between the two. But one thing I know with our partners, we have a great connection with a lot of our partners, and we work together. And very, like I said, very transparent, and they give their impact or their insight, we give ours. And it's the collaboration and the closeness working with those partners that is so important. Now, I lost my train of thought, sorry. But I think and I wanted to say one of the most important things we do is that communication. We have quarterly meetings with our partners, and we bring to them what we're doing in the community. Like, we will actually have them do some of the activities that the students do. We will take them to the board meetings. They're working with breadboards, they're working with microbits, and they love that. And it gives them, we have that closeness. So when you're talking to prospective new partners, you can also, let them see what they can bring to the table and fill in gaps, because we don't have all the answers and all the pieces. Like Reginald said, hey, they were doing robotics, but hey, what about kindergartners? What about, so filling in those gaps. And just something I wanted to point out is the relationship with those partners is absolutely key, absolutely key. So I know I kind of went off the question there, but I wanted to share that because I think that's really important with what we're doing here in Northeast Florida.
That's cool. I love how you're using hands-on activities to communicate an idea. Like, that fills in so many things for you as you communicate. Reginald or Scott, do you want to add to that? Do we speak different languages? What do you think?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And, I think that comes in a lot of different levels too. But I think, as a STEM ecosystem, you can act as a facilitator to help with that dialogue and create those connections. And one of the things we did about 12 years ago was start educator camps, where we have 60 to 100 educators at the park each summer. They get the chance to go into our companies. They get to see the types of things that they do, the careers that they have. They get to have that conversation with the companies, and that's been so beneficial. And when we started that, I think it became pretty obvious to me that there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue going on. And I used to say back then, if we weren't talking to each other, we were probably talking about each other. And I think it was true a lot, kind of that blame game. They need to be doing this, they need to be doing that. But it really, I think, broke down some barriers and built bridges between those two communities. And they do need to understand each other. And in our community, we embrace the 7 habits, and, it's seek understanding, right? And that's one of the first steps, I think, between our education and business community. And, it can be as small as terminology too. And just as an example, industrial maintenance is, a career path here that is in high demand and, great wages. And it's one that we're always promoting within the schools. And so one of our schools came back to us, and it was after one of these experiences where they got to see that industrial maintenance occupation in real time, see what kind of things they do in their environment. They come back and said, okay, for years, you guys have been coming in and selling this industrial maintenance occupation, but to us, that's the person in our building who is changing light bulbs and things like this. So, it was a different image that they came up with in their mind as we were having those conversations with them. So I think it's very important that we do take the time to figure out what we do understand, what we don't understand, and help facilitate those connections.
That's awesome. I love how you're helping them to actually see what it is, because as Celeste said, with their deal, like, if they can see it, then that answers a whole lot of questions on the front end. And we want to make it as easy as possible. We don't want to make it as difficult as possible to understand. That's where we're starting from. So, Reginald, if we want to build a partnership or a relationship with a business partner, like, tell us the 1, 2, 3. Like, what are the 3 things that we should do if we have the language down, which is no small task? Like, what are the next steps?
So let's talk about the language a little bit more as we talk about building this relationship inside the industry. I know a lot of times people come to an industry partner and talk about the importance of economic development and workforce development. That's a part of it. Don't get me wrong. That's a part of the talent pool. But let me give you some new terms when we start building relationships with partners for now and for future. There's a term we use now we call ROP, return on the purpose of what we're trying to get done inside the company as well as outside of the company. So our community outreach piece. We have what we call, there's a new term we use, a return on QL. What's the return on the quality of life? How are we improving our community that we actually help? We have our facilities in, and we're looking to hire people that's already at that age that's ready to work for us, improving the quality of living. And then the one that we talk about the most is when our early careers get involved is what's the return on the retention of our employees participating in these events? We know it's a proven fact. Once employees get, I call, connected to the community, they're more likely to stay in the community, and they're more likely to stay involved with that organization. And they will strengthen the relationship as we begin to start doing more with the organization for the ask. So I know people always like, what's the return on the investment? Well, a lot of times you might not can speak to that, but you can speak to the quality of life that you're going to help us improve, how we're going to maintain or retain our employees, and then just we call it, what's the return on the whole purpose? Why are we doing this? Especially when you're talking to me about being third graders. You know, I'm not really listening to you about workforce development if you ask me to be in an elementary school. I'm really thinking about, so what's the return on purpose? And then one of the news is like, what's the return on inspiration? Because we also find as people volunteer, they come back to work inspired. It works. So speak to those as you start talking about building a partnership with the industry or business partner.
I don't know if
I hope that helps.
Reginald, I don't know if everybody, XAN, is paying close enough attention, just in case you were eating your lunch while you were listening to this. And I might be wrong here, but boy, do I think that the last 45 seconds of this webinar has really, really, really tangible, actionable things. I mean, I wouldn't jump in with all 5 of those in your first meeting, but I would be picking one of those maybe and working that into that initial pitch. That was some really, really good stuff that I am stealing and using and maybe not even crediting you. Yeah. Just kidding.
Golden, right? Because they're always like, what's the return on investment? And you're like, you know, I do have third graders like, in 20 years, they'll come to work for you, Reginald. And you're like, so thank you. That was golden. So now we've talked, now we're establishing the relationship, and we often say that it's super important that it's a win-win relationship, that it's not just us going, please Celeste, please Scott. There should be something in it for you, like Reginald was talking about. So what's the big why? Why does Rolls-Royce invest in STEM? Why do your partners Celeste and Scott, like what's their big why? Because if we understand their why and we can articulate it to them, maybe it'll go smoother for us. Tell us why.
Yeah, well, I just want to say we have, there's 2 types of partners. You have your solution providers and you have your funding partners. And I know some of our key thought partners they include Lego, Microsoft, Code.org, WAS Education, Learning Blade, I could go on. And they are the ones that help give us the ideas, amplify the work in the building. For example, Microsoft and WAS Ed they've played a huge role in us infusing cybersecurity, AI, and drone pathways into the K-12 school day. So that has been very, very impactful, you know, and then, you know, you also have your funding partners. We have the PGA Tour that has partnered with us to help us close the digital divide. So partners, you know, partners have different reasons for being there, and all of them have a purpose, you know, as to the needs of each ecosystem, because each ecosystem is going to have different needs based on, you know, the community and, you know, where they're located and the needs of the students. So I think, you know, that's important that there are different partners, and we have 2, you know, our thought partners are just fabulous and have just, you know, and of course the funding partners, we couldn't do it without them. So I think there's 2 different purposes there a lot, and sometimes they do both.
Awesome.
So
thank you. Scott, you want to tap in on that?
I think Celeste did a fantastic job laying that out right there. And, you know, it's, again, understanding that why of the company, what is valuable to them, what are their goals and objectives, and how can their participation help them achieve those goals and objectives. And so, you know, for us, again, with such a large concentration of employment opportunities, the workforce game is very, very competitive. And so I know for a lot of our companies, their involvement is for that purpose. It's for workforce development. It's getting their brand out there. It's getting that connection to the students in that future workforce. But then, you know, we do have companies that don't struggle as much as probably what the majority of them do, but they are still involved. And so a lot of that is connected back to that community involvement, you know, and being a part of the community and providing some of those quality of life factors. And, you know, I loved that the ROPs, the ROQLs, and the ROR, because that really kind of connects back to, you know, another one of my roles. It's a new role, business retention, and I never thought about it in those terms. So that's fantastic. And I think that gives me just a little more ammunition as I continue to connect with our companies and pull them in. So thank you, Reginald.
Yay, Reginald. Woo-hoo! Do you want to say anything else about that, Reginald? Okay. So we've made the pitch, right? We have the PowerPoint, lunch is wrapping up. How do we close the deal? Like, what are the secret tips for wrapping up an ask? Reginald?
I'm gonna see if I can keep this real simple. So I asked you out, you asked me out, we said yes, we meet for coffee. The coffee is decent. I'm not looking at my watch. You're not looking at your watch.
This is my dream date with you so far, Reginald.
So far we feel like there's some synergy, right? So, but before you ask me for my phone number, you still got to get my vibe though, right? So there's some things I've said that you're gonna repeat to me that I'm like, oh yeah, that does resonate with me, right? So we're getting ready to close the deal. So now you're gonna remind me of why you are doing this as a person. I know you're speaking for organization. You can also remind me of the other partners and why you know that we are a good fit collaborating with other partners. You're gonna remind me of that. And then you're gonna really talk to me about, as I've heard and seen the things that you have done in the other areas and in the community. You're gonna make me feel good about myself, right? Right, make me feel good about myself. So like, thank you for that. And then you're gonna also, if you can, you're gonna also mention to me people that I already know, whether it be a parent working at Rolls-Royce that you might mention, by the way, Jim's and Susan's mom, she's you know, so all those things, you just connecting it for me. So as now I feel good about myself, now I know that I understand where your heart is. And it's okay to even talk about, without you, this is what we can't do. With you, this is what we will do. Be positive about it.
Right.
And then in the end, you're like, so now that we've done all that, you start talking to me as a partner. So when you come on board, here's what our orientation will look like. When you come out and visit us, here's the people I want you to meet. And I know you're a busy person. I'm going to send my metrics to you. I'm not asking you to create metrics. I'm going to send metrics to you to help you know all the things. I know you're busy, to help you see all the impact you have in my organization, with my students, or with my audience, whatever the case may be. And now I'm like, okay, this is good. And you'll say, so the follow-up, I give you a day or two to kind of think about what we talk about, and I will call you Tuesday at 9 a.m. if that's okay. If not, what time should I call you? Don't ask me to send you an email. Make sure I look at my calendar right then and there. So Tuesday at 9 is not good, but can it be 1 o'clock? Then you know we own.
Sorry. Okay, that was golden. I told you this was going to be good. I told you this was going to be good. Okay, Scott and Celeste, what do you want to add to that?
I don't think there's anything to be added.
Yeah, I can't top that. That was beautiful.
I do like him setting up this scenario on the coffee shop, because coffee is for closers, right?
There you go. There you go. I really appreciate that you said commit to calling that follow-up call, because the chicken way out is to email, because you're like, I don't know if he's going to say yes or no. I don't want to get shot down on the phone. But you have to be like, you're representing something that's of value to your community and the company. Don't be all sheepish and like, can I email you? Like, no, like, ask to call them. And I think you're spot on, Reginald. It's
also important to remember with that, Xan, that it's harder for them to say no on a phone call than it is in email. Not impossible, it's not going to completely shift the, tip the scales. But if it's on the borderline, you've got a much better chance if you're talking to someone face to face or over the phone.
It's true. It's true. So, are there any other questions from anyone on the webinar? Anyone want to ask about what we've done so far, because we're getting ready to issue the challenge.
Yeah, there haven't been so far. If anybody does have any specific questions, I just, as you said that, got a direct message, which usually means a person doesn't want to ask the question themselves. So I'll go ahead and ask it. Somebody is asking, is there any value to offering a low-hanging fruit / short-term benefit to the potential partner? If so, what kind of things are there to offer? So in other words, should I come into you with, listen, I want to talk to you about, a decade-long partnership that I think we should have. But to start, I've got this little event. It wouldn't take much from you. Why don't we try this out? Is that appealing, Reginald, or Scott and Celeste? Has that been appealing in conversations you've had?
I think possibly inviting them to an event you're holding in your ecosystem for them to see exactly what, maybe a piece of what you're doing and the benefit in the community. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and say too that at least for me, and I think different people have different strategies, and it's important to play to your own strengths, right? And I have colleagues who they're very go big or go home, and they're successful with that. I'm not. I am not, because I'm a soft ass kind of person. So that strategy works really well for me. Just invite them to attend, or invite, say, we need your help. But what we need is, $1,000. We need this little teeny tiny ask that you don't have to go to a board for. Show them that value, and then, get them to keep coming. So I personally think that that's a good strategy if that's the type of asker that you are. All right, Xan, so what's this about a challenge I keep hearing about?
Here's your summer challenge. I know you have nothing else to do. So Reginald and I have been thinking, and Reginald mostly was doing the thinking, I was doing the writing. So here's your summer challenge. Number 1, identify a company that you want to have as a business partner. So think about your community, think about somebody that you wish was a business partner, but alas, they're not, right? All of us have one of those. Mine is Rolls-Royce and Reginald McGregor. So get ready, Reginald. Do not approach the company as a stranger. Do your homework and investigate how many degrees of separation. Now it sounds like a movie, right? How many degrees of separation are there between you and this company? And talking to Reginald, it's like, maybe, someone in your family has someone that works there, or maybe you have a colleague who has a spouse that works there. Like, really do some homework and think, do I know anybody that's associated with this company? And then the really wise thing that he said was like, start with the person you do know, right? Like, don't feel so afraid that because you don't already know the CEO, that's okay. Like, start with the one you do know. And I thought one of the wisest things he said was like, all along the way, as you're, building that ladder in, you're building advocacy for yourself, because now all these people have heard about you and thought about you and will advocate for you within the company, which is valuable. So you've got your company. This is your goal for the summer. Write down 3 things you learned about the company's STEM engagement. So, like to me, Xan, don't be lazy, right? Like, don't just call them up and go, I have no idea what you're doing, but would you give me money? Like, that's not very attractive. Like, do your homework, know what they care about. Like, do they hate robotics and they are never going to give money for robotics, or they love robotics? Like, or are they only females? Do they only want Native American? Like, what is it that lights their fires as far as STEM goes? You should know that when you go in. And I thought that was really wise too. Let's see, my phone went to sleep. Okay. Identify how your work aligns or does not align with what they want. So don't say we are a lock solid fit and they know that you're not. Like, say these are the areas where what we do perfectly matches with what Rolls-Royce wants to do, and have that ready for them. Capture 3 names in the company with preferred contact information. So this is your goal for the summer, right? The company you're interested in, how you line up with them, think to yourself your degrees of separation, figure out 3 contacts within the company and their contact info, and then make a plan. Who's the first person you're going to contact and why? Reginald always asks hard questions, right? Like, and why? Like, why are you going to go to them first? Think about that. There's a strategy there. Write down your opening introduction. Say it in the mirror 5 times. No, but just know what you're going to say. Know how you're going to land it. Always think about gymnastics, like stick the landing. Know exactly what your last statement is. Don't fumble around and meal around with that. Write down your specific ask, the why, and how you plan to show return on purpose or return on investment. We learned about that today. And then, drum roll please, be prepared to present it at our second Building Business Partnership working session this fall. So there's going to be a comeuppance here. We're going to ask, how'd it go? And we will also, as Jeremy will talk more about that, but we want to not only do homework and see how did it go and talk about that, but we'd also like to have time that's like, okay, so you have this business partnership. How do you sustain that? Like, how do we have the type of partnership where not only is it going to go on for years, but what if it's going to grow or scale? Do they have buddies that would also like to come into this, like companies that they're like, you know what, these guys also need to know about you. What do we do in the partnership so that they will then become an advocate for us with other companies? So that's what we have coming up for you in the fall. And I will kick it back over to Jeremy.
Well, thank you, Xan, and thank you, Reginald, Scott, and Celeste. I really appreciate this. I know I got some great new tactics and notes, and I hope everybody listening did as well. As Xan mentioned, we will be back together again in the fall, a date yet to be determined. In the meantime, think about that challenge. I'm sure Xan's going to email it out. I know there's a lot of steps, so I'm sure you're going to get a kind of a bulleted list of those at some point soon. And really, really think about participating in that challenge. It only benefits you and your ecosystem to make these attempts and to grow your internal network. So in the meantime, before that next session, we'd like you to be thinking about your business partnerships. Are they strong? How are you maintaining those relationships through reports or social media or employee volunteers? And how are you planning to grow that relationship? And based on today, how are you planning on adding new partners to that relationship? Before we go, we'd also like you to consider one other opportunity. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now, and that's for the Ecosystems eSpace. This is not a thing that you need to think about as this like giant, polished, multi-million-dollar project. What we're looking for is to try to recreate some of the magic that happens in the hallways and by the snack tables and things like that at the ecosystems. So what we'd really like you to think about doing is think about the things that you're doing great. And if you're saying nothing, if you're saying I've got nothing to share, then you're being too hard on yourself, because I guarantee you that you have things in your ecosystems that you are doing better than everybody else. So does this have to be, can this be some crazy deep, course with supplement? Sure. I mean, go for it if you've got that kind of time. But if you don't, think about the things that you'd be sharing with people if you met them for coffee. And as an example, I feel confident that Reginald is already thinking about a 5 or 10 minute little mini course he can do on how to approach these companies and the types of questions to ask them, and the ROQLs and the RORs and the ROWs and the ROZs and whatever ROs he's got. And I know that Scott is really thinking about, aren't you, Scott? Don't fade into the shadows. He's really thinking about the camps, the summer camps that his ecosystem is doing and how those are working and what people need to think about. Grab your phone, take a quick video, and upload that conversation. It can be 5 minutes. So make sure that you're thinking about those. Go to that link, read all about it, be checking there for other people's, and really, really please consider adding one yourself. Do we have any, we've got a couple minutes before we officially close. So I think we're going to end early, but I'm hoping that maybe we could do one quick around the horn before we do Scott, Celeste, Reginald. Talk just really quickly, 1 or 2 sentences. If we're going to take one thing away from today, if our participants are going to take one thing away from today, what to you is the most salient thing? And you can't repeat things. Scott, how about kicking us off?
Can make me go first. I think really kind of maybe, think in terms of the industry's perspective, put yourself in their shoes as you approach them. And I think that'd be really helpful with the conversation that you have with them.
Perfect. Thank you. Celeste?
I would say really listen to those partners, hear what they have to offer, and, really think about, the connections and how you could benefit each other and complement each other.
Yeah. What value are you getting from me too? Reginald?
Right.
Think about your location. There might be some companies and industry partners that your students and your staff drive by every day and have no idea what those people are doing on the other side of that fence. So think about that as well. And then the last thing I want to mention that Xan, she didn't say was, and I can't speak for the rest of them, I think you was going to ask us to have office hours. If anybody want to call us.
Okay,
So if anybody want to give us, so I'll send my office hour date and time. So anybody want to call and just talk a little bit if they have a direct question. And Scott, Celeste, I hope you guys are joining on the
You're
office
just thrown under
hours.
the bus is what he's saying. So how cool is that to have office hours with these guys so that if something comes up, as it always does, or you have a specific like, but what about when the guy says this, you can ask it. This is golden.
That is
Do
an
it.
opportunity I would be using for sure. Xan, what about you? Most important point from today?
I just love the relationship, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what it's about. I had someone tell me what, and it's like, take care of the relationships and the money will take care of itself. And I think that's mostly true. Like if you think about it as what would I do for a friendship? What would I invest in them as a person? Then everything else will work out. They're not a human ATM machine.
And then I always point to my piece. I always point to try to think about the organizations that probably people aren't approaching because it's not obvious. They're the ones, the Rolls Royces of the world that probably get asked all the time. But I always think about when we were working in Cleveland on a CS initiative, and we sort of discovered that if a company has a building with at least 2 floors, then they have a programming department. So people that we weren't thinking about, like the tire company, has 75 programmers on staff that never get asked to do things because nobody goes to the tire company. So think about the places that other people aren't asking. Thank you all for joining us today. Reginald, Scott, Celeste, thank you. Xan, thank you for hosting us today. Again, please click on that link. Even if you're not going to read it right now, click on that eSpace link, bookmark it. Make sure you read it soon, submit some things, and we will see all of you very soon. Thanks, everyone.